Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today. I was a couple of minutes late because one of my favorite Insight Timer teachers, Mikhail, was also live, and I just wanted to catch like the first 30 seconds just to get his good vibes before I went live. I don't know if any of you know him, but yeah, he's fantastic. And there was also Carol, who she I think she's fairly new to Insight Timer. I don't know if any of you know her, but her live sessions are incredible as well. So I was listening to her just before this one, and I wanted to catch the end. But let me just say hi to everybody. Hi, Iga. Hi, Sue. Hi, Kate. Lovely to have you all here. And yeah, if you haven't been here before, please say hello in the chat. Let me know if this is your first time, and I can give you a bit of an overview around kind of what we do here typically, how our sessions are structured, and then yeah, also would love to kind of just say hi and welcome you as part of our community, because we have a little community here of kind of regulars that come back every week. And I've been very consistent since joining Insight Time. I've managed to do a weekly session, even with kind of travel and other things in the way. So my sessions sometimes change day. They're always at 9 p.m. UK time, but it depends on, sometimes I'll do a Tuesday, usually Wednesday or Thursday, but it's been Wednesday the last few weeks. So we have Kate and Mary Lou, who are some of our first timers. So if any of our regulars are here, please say hi to them, welcome them. Hi, Elisa, lovely to have you here as well. And essentially, what we do here and why we do it is that there's kind of more loneliness and isolation in the world than ever before. And especially kind of, we're all really privileged and lucky to know about Insight Timer and kind of be here and have this sort of connection and community, even remotely and online. But a lot of people don't have things like this in their lives. A lot of people don't even know about Insight Timer. So, if you do get a chance and you think people that you know would benefit, please tell them about Insight Timer and just share it generally if you think they'll get some benefit. For me personally, my Insight Timer journey, I first discovered the live sessions. So I kind of knew about all of the recorded tracks and stuff, but I discovered the live sessions, and some of you who've been to my sessions before know this. But I had just gone through a breakup. I was living with somebody, and then I went from kind of, having somebody around all the time to then living alone. And I think it was also just after the kind of COVID-y times. So there was an element still of some sort of social isolation and that kind of thing. And it was also, the relationship ended in December, and it was so then obviously we had the kind of Christmas and like that gap between Christmas and New Year as well, where it's kind of quiet, and I was living alone. So, oh, hi Blossom, lovely to see you here. Welcome, welcome. For those of you who don't know Blossom Violet, please follow her. She's an incredible musician, and I mean, Blossom, your music is incredible, but what I love even more is your energy, your kind of warmth and personality. And she's just kind of the warmest, loveliest, most sort of endearing person to watch. And yeah, it's been a pleasure kind of getting to know her and some of the other teachers through my teacher journey as well. But yeah, we have quite a few like lovely teachers who often pop in here, and what I have to say is everyone kind of supports each other. Everyone's sort of really kind and friendly, and yeah, thanks for listening in. I'm sure you're doing other bits as well. Um, so where was I? So my kind of journey on Insight Timer was that I was living alone, and I discovered the lives, and I used to listen to them in the evenings, which I found was kind of the loneliest time. Does anyone else find that? So, usually if you're, during the day, it's kind of okay. You can kind of get busy with things, but I think as the day gets quieter, and especially as it gets darker and in the deep depths of winter, um, for me anyway, I find that's typically the kind of time where most people are more susceptible to loneliness. And, there's stereotypes around this as well, with kind of older people who don't get out as much, because sometimes when it's really cold as well, obviously you're less inclined to kind of go outside, meet people, make connections as well. So for me, that was the situation I was in, and I discovered the lives on Insight Timer just by chance. And I started listening to them every night when I would get ready for bed and do the washing up after dinner and things like that. And it was such a great support, and it really made a huge difference to me. And I met loads of lovely people just through the sessions. And I'll always remember, for me, Catherine Ramati, that was one of the first kind of lives that I used to go to regularly. And Yeah, guys, so just to clarify, Blossom Violet is an amazing, amazing musician and an amazing human being, like both. So if you want kind of lovely music and good vibes, listen to her tracks, and please give her a rating, and also give her a follow on here. She's fab. And yeah, there's loads of people here that kind of say that as well. And yeah, so I met Iga as well through Tan Mai's music sessions. And Iga, how many years ago was that now? And Iga and I sometimes message and we kind of stay in touch as well. But yeah, it's such a wonderful community. And now I'm teaching on here and I feel so privileged to hopefully be bringing some of the same kind of energy and vibes, and hopefully giving like other people something nice to listen to when they've got free time, or want to just feel sort of like seen and heard and like they belong, even in a remote setting. So the way my sessions are typically structured, it's kind of, we talk about community, building authentic, meaningful connection. And there's various themes within that come up, things like relationships, sort of communication, roadblocks to connection. Last week, what did we talk about? It was around kind of perspective and how shifting our perspectives can actually help us to connect better and have better relationships, and also kind of reduce our pain and suffering. And actually, I think that might be one of my favorite sessions I've ever done, because I think it's something that we could all use. But particularly in my case, I think a lot of my sort of, I guess, stress or pain or suffering is stuff that I could control, like not necessarily the situations, but where I go from there. And as always, just a little reminder and PSA to please have a sip of water if you need to, stay hydrated, keep your immune system up. So, and I think I'm not very good at this, but I need to kind of do a better job of pacing myself when I speak and also taking a breath, because we've got an hour and a half together, and I do find that by the end, sometimes my throat is a little bit, shall we say, worse for wear. And where was I? Where was I? I was saying kind of the normal structure of our sessions. So today's session, I kind of generally go with what comes up organically for me based on what I've read, what I've listened to, sometimes what I've heard. And one kind of topic and theme that has come up a lot in the past is kind of attachment styles, particularly anxious attachment, which I mention a lot, which I struggle with. And, I'm pretty open and candid about my own experience with it and how that has affected me. But what I didn't realize until maybe the last few years is that actually the things that I feel and experience and how I can sometimes act out are very typical and very common. And there's loads of people that kind of experience that and have the same sort of habits and behaviors. And what's super interesting about that is that I didn't realize that it was literally like thousands of people until I joined a specific course and community run by kind of some psychotherapists around anxious attachment and healing it. And there's a kind of community and forums on there and stuff. And it just made me feel really kind of seen and understood, and like there wasn't necessarily something just wrong with me. Because I don't know whether any of you can relate to this, or, and feel free to share in the chat if you've got any experience with or understanding of attachment styles and attachment theory, and what your own kind of attachment issues, or I guess that's not really the word that I want to use, but what your own, I guess, attachment triggers, behaviors, kind of patterns are. And we can have a little discussion. It's a kind of safe space. If anyone feels comfortable sharing, please do. If anybody has any questions or anything that you could use a bit of support or some compassion with, as a space, we're generally all very good at doing that and helping with that for you. And also, if anyone has anything that they are really happy about or celebrating and they want to share with the group, anything that you've achieved or you're proud of, or let's even say as simple as, picking up a new behavior, like trying something new, please let us know so that we can share in that and kind of, help you harness that gratitude and joy as well, and kind of share it with everyone in the room. So ultimately, my goal for this next kind of hour and 15 minutes, because we're 15 minutes in now, and it's 21:12 here, so it's kind of the reverse mirrored angel numbers. But my goal is just for us to kind of have a nice time together, have a chat around, attachment styles. I've got some bits that I'm going to read, which are largely from a book called Attached, which is one of the sort of most famous or popular books around attachment style. And if anyone has any questions at any points, any comments, I'll sort of feel free to drop them in the chat and I can catch up on them sort of in between the other bits. So let me just catch up now. So Ego, yeah, it's been probably 3 years or more, I think. Absolutely. I think, yeah, yeah, probably it has probably been like 3-4 years or so. And so hi Sue. We've said hi already, haven't we? Oh Lorette, hi. Lovely to see you here. Hi Melinda. Oh yeah, Ego, maybe 4. I think it is 4 because I was adding up kind of other things that happened around the same time. So for anyone that's just joined, Ego and I are trying to figure out when we first kind of met and got talking. So yeah, it's been a long time, hasn't it? How long has everybody else here been on Insight Timer? Have we got any kind of newbies or anybody who's been here for like, more than 5 years and known about the lives that whole time? Because I actually used to use the app for a couple of years, but I didn't realize there were live sessions up until I think it was maybe December 2020 or something like that. And now I'm here teaching them. So the reason that I picked this kind of topic of attachment styles is, at least for me, I find that this is something that can sort of both help and hinder my own sort of relationships and connections. And I'm going to explain a little bit about that. But just before we launch into that, because I'm aware that not everyone's familiar with attachment styles or what they mean, is anyone completely new to kind of attachment theory and attachment styles and doesn't know too much about it? If you send up some hearts or just mention it in the chat, yeah, I'll give you a bit of an overview. Just to kind of as a heads up, everything that I share here is my own learnings, my own experience, things that I've read. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not kind of equipped to give sort of deep high level advice around anything specific, but I have a lot of personal experience and I'm happy to kind of share what's helped me and where I'm at with this journey. So yeah, and if I can be of help or service to anyone else, I'm more than happy to do that, and that's kind of why I'm here. So attachment theory, there's a kind of bigger picture backstory to it, but ultimately what the kind of thinking behind it is that it's not just I mean, some people have thought that, it's what happens to you in childhood, but actually more recently they've established that it's to do with childhood, but also kind of early relationships, like early adult relationships as well. And your attachment style can change and adapt, and also the partner that you're with can bring out different different parts of your attachment style. Sometimes you might be kind of more triggered by a particular person than you would be by somebody else. It just really depends. And I think also kind of it's on a spectrum. So let's say you have anxious attachment and your partner's on the other end of the spectrum and has avoidant attachment style. Usually those two kind of polar opposites tend to trigger each other, and they sort of make each other like worse, so to speak. But what's interesting, in the evidence kind of points to the fact that if you're in a relationship, even if you have an insecure attachment style, which is typically avoidant, anxious, or a combination of the two, which is kind of anxious avoidant or disorganized, you can, if you're in a relationship with a secure partner, they can quite often make you secure as well. And there's loads of studies done around this, and they mention this in the book Attached. And I didn't really know this, but yeah, apparently, like, finding someone who is secure if you're not can rub off on you in a positive way. So that's really nice to know. And I think unfortunately, I have anxious attachment, and I think largely I have gravitated towards people who have more of an avoidant attachment style than secure or anxiously attached. And the reason that is because obviously we all know the saying opposites attract, and it's pretty much that's exactly it. Is the things that kind of cause our attachment style to develop are, how we were raised, how our kind of childhood looked, and people misunderstand that, oh, something big and like massive and traumatic had to have happened to you for you to have a kind of insecure, unhealthy, so to speak, attachment style. But actually, it can be as simple as, your parents worked really hard and didn't always have time to kind of play with you properly or listen to you. Um, Similarly, it can be that, you were in like daycare or childcare a lot and your parents, again, were busy with work or whatever. Or, it can be even little things like that where your parents weren't necessarily being negligent or bad parents, or, your primary caretakers, not necessarily parents. But ultimately as children and babies, we require a lot of like safety, reassurance, and because and that serves a purpose. And I've kind of talked about this before on the lives I've read from Attached before, and I've said that one of the things that's clear is like, as a baby or a child, we can't survive on our own, and therefore we're hardwired to rely on our primary caretakers, because if we didn't, we wouldn't be able to stay alive. So it serves a purpose. And even us being social creatures, previously, back in the day, we would have had to rely on each other to stay alive, to stay fed and safe and all these things. So it is very much a case of, it's like our attachment styles exist, and attachment exists to serve a purpose. Where that can then be kind of, I guess, like misdirected or, slightly malfunction is when, as a baby or a child, let's say, our kind of primary needs of safety and stability weren't met, whether that was knowingly or not from our primary caretaker's point of view. And also from, our early relationships, for example, if they weren't great, or, we were cheated on or whatever, or things happened that made us then feel like we had an insecure attachment style, um, that's kind of, that shapes how we then show up in relationships for the rest of our lives, unless we kind of do the work and change something. So um the kind of, and also I should kind of go a step back. Hi Carol, lovely to see you here. So I should go a step back to explain kind of what is, secure attachment, what's insecure attachment, and what other, how does it work. So ultimately, secure attachment is where, as kind of, and this is again going back to the baby or child stereotype, where as a baby or a child, you had your needs met every time you cried, you were picked up, and fundamentally, overall, you felt kind of safe. You felt like you could rely on your primary caregivers, and you didn't feel like there was any threat. Um, and that meant that growing up, you basically feel like you have a kind of healthy, reasonable, realistic ability to relate to others, both kind of in relationships, friendships, etc. There's no like paranoia, there's no extra fear, there's no kind of angst or, anything else that comes with the insecure attachment styles. And ultimately, you have, so to speak, you have better boundaries, you are better at self-regulating, and you kind of have a more balanced approach to life and relationships. Now, insecure attachment styles, as I said, the two kind of main ones are anxious attachment and avoidant attachment style. Now, these are basically two sides of the same coin. What happened here in insecure attachment styles is basically that, a child or a baby has grown up not feeling necessarily safe or like they can rely on their parents. And as I said, this isn't because, necessarily you had bad parents or they weren't there for you, but it can be simple things like not feeling heard, or, being in childcare a lot if your parents were busy working, etc., etc. So, it's not necessarily that, it doesn't have to be that there was some big trauma or some big thing that happened to you. Now, how insecure attachment styles kind of play out is there's, as I said, two of them, anxious and avoidant. Now, that basically both of those meet kind of two sides of the same coin, as I said, where, because you didn't feel safe as a child, with avoidant attachment style, you basically come to the conclusion that, well, I can't rely on anybody, so therefore I'm going to distance myself from people, I'm going to protect myself, I'm not going to get too close to anyone. And therefore, anytime you do start to get close to somebody, you feel the need to pull away, you feel like you want space, because you've got a belief that basically people are going to let you down or not be there for you. And therefore, subconsciously, the decisions and the behaviors that you kind of engage in or practice are conducive to that belief. Now, with anxious attachment style, which I have, and quite significantly, might I add, or not significantly, but like, I'm textbook anxiously attached. You basically believe that you have a fear of abandonment, a fear of rejection. And again, it comes from not having your needs met. It comes from the fear of being let down. But instead of saying, oh, well, I'm going to carve out my own way and I'm not going to rely on anyone, you end up clinging to people and being afraid of rejection, and you're fearful of being abandoned. And that's like your kind of main driving force. Well, particularly in relationships, that's the main thing on your mind. So ultimately, that's kind of the way that the two, the way the same thing can manifest in two opposite ways. Now, what's interesting about this is that as soon as you kind of start to understand and unpack this, what we realize is that when we're getting into kind of relationships, or sometimes even friendships or job situations, or, what we put up with or the boundaries we set, this kind of comes into play more than we know sometimes. So, as a simple example of how anxious attachment might show up outside of a romantic relationship, and it's worth noting as well that the reason that these styles are most often talked about in romantic relationships is because, when we're a child or a baby, our parental figure or primary caregiver is, the main person in our lives that we kind of turn to. We regulate ourselves based on them, etc. And that's because, when you're a baby for the first however many months of your life, you don't even know that you're separate to your mother. That only comes later in infancy. So, that's why if your mother is kind of sad or having a difficult time as a baby, you would also really feel that and kind of sometimes internalize that as well without even knowing what's going on. And you're very much, the way that your mother kind of soothes you, or the way that your mother regulates herself, then affects you as a baby, because you don't see yourself as being separate or distinct from her. So where this comes into play, so basically, and then the point is that with our romantic relationships, generally speaking, those are the most important, significant connections in our lives. The person that we probably spend the most time with, the person that we're closest to, potentially live with. And that's where that kind of transference happens, as far as I understand it. So, but outside of romantic relationships, there is also a lot of ways that these things still show up. So, as a simple example, somebody who has anxious attachment, they generally require like some reassurance or praise or kind of validation more than someone who has secure or avoidant attachment style. And in my case, absolutely me. I need a lot of validation. I need a lot of like praise, reassurance, more than I care to admit. But well, actually, not more than I care to admit, because I'm pretty open, and I'm a pretty open book, so I'm happy to kind of tell it like it is. But I definitely require it more than I think is healthy or reasonable, and more than I would like to. And that's something that I'm certainly working on. So, how this can show up in other situations outside of a romantic relationship, um, a simple or common one is in the workplace. So, a lot of people who have kind of anxious attachment in the community that I'm part of do share situations where they basically like don't feel good enough at work, or they kind of put up with poor treatment from a boss because they can't kind of set a boundary, because there's a sense of like loyalty or attachment to the job that they have as well, and even if they're not totally happy there. So that's kind of some of those examples. Similarly, I was once in a relationship with somebody who was very, very avoidant, and he would change jobs every 2 months, which I found like absolutely baffling. And he would be so convinced every time that like this job was going to be the one and this one was going to stick. And there'd also been times in his life where, he had friends that told me that he would just kind of like suddenly move abroad without saying anything to anyone. So, fundamentally, um, if we're sort of slightly simplifying it, people who have anxious attachment really value like stability, knowing where they stand, knowing what to expect. And, there's an element of trying to sometimes control things outside of us, and trying to get a feeling of like safety for ourselves. And that's why sometimes, anxiously attached people, we kind of tell ourselves that, oh, we really care, and we just like, we're being controlling or we're being overbearing because we really care about this other person or these other people, and we just kind of want the best for them. But it's not really about that. What it actually is about is us trying to control circumstances or control someone else's behavior or actions so that we can feel safer and so that we can give ourselves an element of predictability. So that's kind of, what it's actually about, if we're being honest. And, you might be at a point where you kind of can see and realize that, or you might be in a different place in your journey where actually this is the first time you're kind of thinking about or hearing that or realizing that. And then for avoidance, a really common thing is that they need like space quite often. They like freedom. They sometimes can enjoy like spontaneity a lot more than people with anxious attachment. But again, everybody's different and it's a spectrum. So like I might be anxiously attached in some ways, but then I might have other avoidant behaviors. And what a kind of common trope is that like if somebody who has anxious attachment meets somebody who's securely attached and doesn't really pose any threat or any problems, and they're not triggering the fear of abandonment, quite often, and I've done this before and I'm guilty of this, the person who has anxious attachment can sometimes become avoidant because basically for me, I'm used to people who are avoidant. That's what's familiar. That's what in a way feels like kind of safe for me. So when and if I meet somebody who has secure attachment style, even though I say that's what I want and that's what I'm looking for, um, I'm not used to those patterns, and therefore, I'm looking for what's wrong. I'm looking for the other shoe to drop, and I'm potentially like sabotaging or self-sabotaging, and this is super common. So Sue, when you say this, that you switch between anxious and avoidant, does that make sense in any way? Yes. And I have a follow-up question to you, which if you're open and kind enough to answer, I would love to kind of like explore this with you. Um, do you find that your anxious attachment style comes out in situations where like a slight fear of like abandonment or, a trigger around like anxiety or, not getting your needs met or inconsistency or something, or a curveball? Does your anxious attachment come out in those kinds of situations typically? And does your avoidant attachment style sometimes come out when things like are a little bit too kind of close or feel a bit too kind of intense, or you feel a sense of some sort of like pressure? Um, that's kind of what's typical. Yeah, okay, cool, absolutely. Yeah, and if you can share any specific examples or even, just broadly speaking, that would be great because just to give people in the room who kind of don't get it, a bit of insight. But for me, I've noticed that. I've noticed that recently I've been having more avoidant behaviors, and it's really shocking to me. And yeah, I might have this page open. Let me see. So I've got this book for us to read, and the reason that I wanted to talk about this today is because basically how our no, I have anxious attachment, but how our collective attachment styles show up for us and come into play um, affects kind of how we communicate, how we behave, and sometimes, and those of you who aren't familiar with this will kind of be like, what? But sometimes we act like actual children, and it's because there's somewhere deep down a kind of inner core child wound that is being sort of triggered or activated or unearthed, and that's the place that we're coming from. So it's just opening. Right. So examples of secure principles, which I think is a good starting point. So this is the kind of behaviors that a securely attached person typically exhibits, like in a relationship. Be available, don't interfere, act encouragingly, communicate effectively, don't play games, view yourself as responsible for your partner's well-being, wear your heart on your sleeve, be courageous and honest in your interactions, maintain focus on the problem at hand, don't make generalizations during conflict, douse the flame before it becomes a forest fire, attend to your partner's upsets before they escalate. Right. So that is examples of secure principles. Now, let's find others. Okay. So, give me a moment. So, common anxious thoughts, emotions, and reactions. The thoughts are things like mind reading, so where you just assume where your partner's coming from or what they want. Like, that's it. I know they're leaving me. I'll never find anyone else. I know this was too good to last. Like these sort of thoughts. All or nothing thinking. I've ruined everything. There's nothing I can do to mend the situation. They can't treat me this way. I'll show them. I knew something would go wrong. Nothing ever works out right for me. I have to talk to or see them right now. They'd better come crawling back to beg my forgiveness, otherwise they can forget about me forever. Maybe if I look drop dead gorgeous or act seductive, things will work out. They are so amazing. Why would they want to be with me anyway? Remembering all the good things your partner ever did and said after coming down from a fight. Recalling only the bad things your partner has ever done when you're fighting. And the emotions that typically someone with anxious attachment feels in these scenarios is sad, angry, fearful, resentful, frustrated, depressed, hopeless, despairing, jealous, hostile, vengeful, guilty, self-loathing, restless, uneasy, humiliated, hate-filled, uncertain, agitated, rejected, unloved, lonely, misunderstood, and unappreciated. And the typical actions, the way these kind of play out. So acting out, attempting to reestablish contact at any cost. So like, this is a really stereotypical one, but trying to call someone loads of times, even if they're not picking up. Pick a fight, wait for them to make the first reconciliation move, threaten to leave, act hostile, roll your eyes, look disdainful, try to make them feel jealous, act busy or unapproachable, withdraw, stop talking to your partner or turn away from them physically, act manipulatively. Now, common avoidant thoughts, emotions, and reactions. So, this is the opposite end of the spectrum. So, the thoughts are all or nothing thinking, like I knew they weren't right for me, this proves it. Overgeneralizing. I knew I wasn't made to be in a close relationship. Another thought, they're taking over my life. I can't take it. Now I have to do everything their way. The price is too high. I need to get out of here. I feel suffocated. If they were the one, this kind of thing wouldn't happen. When I was with insert name of Phantom X, this wouldn't have happened. So this Phantom X thing, by the way, is basically where people who have avoidant attachment style can sometimes have that whole grass is greener mentality about their ex, even if it really wasn't. And that's why they call it the kind of Phantom X. There's a longing for this Phantom X that actually wasn't that great. But because they it's just being avoidant of the situation you're currently in, so therefore you're thinking about past relationship. Malicious intent, so that this is the next bullet point in the thoughts of someone who has avoidant attachment style, that thinking that your partner has malicious intent. They're really out to annoy me. It's so obvious. They just want to tie me down. This isn't true love. Fantasize about having sex with other people. I'll be better off on my own. They're so needy. It's pathetic. And the emotions typically are withdrawn, frustrated, angry, pressured, unappreciated, misunderstood, resentful, hostile, aloof, empty, deceived, tense, hate-filled, self-righteous, contemptuous, despairing, and scornful. And restless and distrustful. So the actions of an avoidant person are to act out, to get up and leave. So, I had an ex once who, anytime that we would have any sort of conflict, even a small thing, he would literally just leave. He would just be so uncomfortable that he would basically physically just leave the apartment. He would just be out the door, which is, absolutely insane to me. But yeah, belittling your partner, acting hostile, looking disdainful, making critical remarks, withdrawing mentally or physically, minimizing physical contact, keep emotional sharing to a minimum, and stop listening to your partner, so ignoring them. And yeah, that's kind of that's a little overview on just some of the, I guess, emotions and actions and thoughts associated with um the different attachment styles, so secure, anxious, and avoidant, which are the kind of main three. So let me just have a little look at through all the comments. So Lorette, you said, oh hi Mel, by the way, if I haven't said hi already. Lorette said, the first year I was with my husband, I was so anxious I couldn't let him out of my sight. Now I've been with him 44 years. Wow, that's so lovely. How did you, Lorette? Was there anything that significantly shifted for you, or that you did differently, or that helped you with that? I'd love to know. And I think, yeah, that's awesomely inspirational. And also, how did he deal with that as well? I'd love to know. Okay, so Iga, thanks for being our welcoming committee today. We haven't got Lauren in, I don't think. So Sue, we already covered your comment, yeah. And yeah, so Lorette, you're saying my child wants security, and I assume you mean your inner child. Yeah. And I honestly, like, sometimes it is really difficult. There's times where I literally need what I need or want what I want. And it's something simple. Like I'll need a specific type of like validation, or, some sort of like, yeah, validation or reassurance, or, it might be that I need to like be held or have a specific like thing that I feel will make me feel safe. And if I don't get that, then it kind of feels worse and worse, and the neediness kind of grows and grows until it's resolved. So Alessa, hi, by the way, welcome. So I will say I'm feeling so much relief and pride for sure, because I can see how all of those thoughts are so unhelpful and unhealthy. I'm interested to hear the healthy ones too, though. Yeah, Alessa, I think you might have missed the healthy ones that we read just before these, but I record all of my sessions and I put them on YouTube, so you can listen back if you've missed these as well. But oh yeah, Lorette, you realised that after 5 years he wasn't going to abandon you, so you just relaxed, and I guess he really liked you. Yeah, I'm sure. Not even like, loved and loves. Lorette, are you open to sharing any of the kind of like anxious behaviours or patterns that you had, if you remember any of them? Anything that, looking back, you'd be like, oh, I'm like mortified, because that's what happens. Like there's some other way that we behave when we're feeling under threat is hi Sue, lovely to have you here, and thanks for following me. Yeah, you can catch up on the rest of this if you'd like to on YouTube. At some point I'll be posting it in the next couple of weeks, but there's other sessions there as well. And yeah, looking forward to having you back soon. And oh no, Alessa, I caught the E, but thanks for telling me I was on the right track. Lovely to meet you. Is this your first time here as well? So we have more things to kind of read through. So I will keep catching up with the comments. So please feel free to share things if you've got any questions, anything you'd like to add or share with the group, any wisdom, personal experiences, insights. We're all here to learn from each other. I kind of see myself as being kind of the conduit, or the sort of, a facilitator in a sense. And sometimes we do have really beautiful discussions and people share amazing wisdom in the chat too. So yeah, if you've got anything to say, or you just want to say hi and introduce yourself if it's your first time here, please do. And just to reiterate, if anyone has anything that they need some support or compassion, or positive thoughts around, like, please let us know in the chat, and we can all kind of have a think and focus on that together as a collective. And also, if you have any questions, anything you just kind of want to feel kind of seen or heard, feel free to share in the chat, or on the positive spectrum, on the positive side of things, anything that you're celebrating, anything that you're proud of, that you want us to kind of share in with you and also big you up, let us know. Or anything you've got coming up that you're trying to do, any goals or any big achievements upcoming, like anything that we can support you on as well. So, Alessa, yes, I will be talking about kind of, I think at the moment for today's session, it's largely just going to be kind of understanding what all of those things are and what they look like. And I will share some tips on my own personal journey of kind of what's helped me and what I struggle with. Um, so Lorette has said, well, so Lorette was saying that she was super anxious when she initially was with her husband, and then now they've been married for 44 years. And she said after 5 years, basically, she relaxed, kind of knowing that he wasn't going to abandon her and that, he really loves her. And so I asked basically, what was there any particular like triggers or situations or kind of how did it get solved? And so she's just said, well, he was a ski racer, that's cool, and wanted to go out of town. It would mean sharing hotel rooms with other members on the ski team, and I would have so much anxiety, so he just didn't go, but nothing other than that. Oh, Mel, that's so cute. A happy 20th anniversary for next week. Hi, Gopesh. Lovely to see you here. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, so on YouTube I'm Priyanka Rose 1111. I'll type that. Or Ega, can you type that in the chat? It's one word. Or anyone who knows and follows me, if you pop it in. Just write the tag. So we're gonna head back to the attachment principles at play. And also I've got a Linktree link in my bio as well. So you can kind of, if you follow me on Insight Timer, you'll know about all my lives. They're usually at 9 p.m. on typically a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or Thursday. But definitely Wednesday this week, possibly Tuesday next week, I think. So, well, actually, I think it might be Thursday next week. Let's see. TBC. What I want to do though, what I should start doing, but I'm absolutely underwater with a kind of volunteering community theatre show, immersive theatre show thing I'm working on at the moment. But I want to make sure that I have my next live scheduled when I'm doing my current live so that I can tell you all when to expect me the following week, or you can, even put it in your diaries. But the reason that I've been struggling with that a little bit is because just at the moment we have like rehearsals and castings and all of these things going on, which means that I'm not always super available basically. I don't always know my availability like a week or more in advance. So in terms of other attachment principles at play, so for anxious attachment, there's protest behavior. So what protest behavior is? Does anybody know what protest behavior is? Can anyone share it in the chat? And I'll let you know if you're right, or I will tell you what it is. If not, if no one knows or if no one shares. I have vaguely mentioned it before, but only in passing. I don't know. I know it takes when I'm on live sometimes, I know it takes a while for me to like type the I know it takes a while to sometimes type out the comments. I'm laughing because of Gopesh's oh no, so he gets protest behavior, like protest, not processed behavior. That's, although I think that sounds interesting too. Maybe we should look into if that's a thing and what it is. So Gopesh said, "Happy anniversary, Mel. You can send me money on my bank account for the party. Haha, jokes apart, enjoy." Oh, I love the sense of humor on these groups as well. It's always like a good time. So protest behavior is basically where am I on the right page? Hang on. I'm on a Kindle, so I'm just checking where I'm at. Okay, protest behavior. So I do this sometimes. It's where we so I'll just I'll type it in the chat as well. Protest. Hang on. Yeah, like this. So yeah, it's basically where you are acting out, but in a protesting way. So for example, it's someone who is and it's typically a behavior that people with anxious attachment do. So it's like if your partner lets you down or does something that upsets you and you're just like, oh, we might as well just break up, or like you kind of, you threaten to like end the relationship, or you don't answer their calls because they didn't call you when they said they would, or like, it's anything that's like slightly protesty, kind of like not necessarily tantrum, but when a child kind of acts out, it's like that sort of behaviors. Um, so yeah, that's basically yeah. So Alessa, you said you read that it's that you communicate your needs indirectly. It's kind of passive aggressive, but it's like I mean, another kind of softer way of putting it is sort of being in a huff. So, I'll give you examples of protest behavior that I've engaged in. If I've been kind of upset or let down, then like I won't answer calls or reply to messages, and I'll feel kind of hurt and upset. Another thing is like where you threaten to break up with somebody, for example, which is, when that came up earlier in the kind of anxious attachment thing. Um, Even though that's, I think, more of an avoidant thing, but that is protest behavior. Protest behavior can sometimes be kind of avoidanty. So, if you think about avoidance needing space and thinking that the other person is kind of clingy or whatever, it makes sense and stands to reason then that um, that protest behavior is more in line with that. If it's suddenly you like going quiet or you ignoring someone, it's so like protest behavior in anxious attachment is the kind of avoidant puzzle piece of the anxious attachment toolkit, I suppose. So activating strategies as well are another attachment principle at play for people who have anxious attachment. So this is like any thought, feeling, or behavior that will result in an increased desire to reconnect. Putting your partner on a pedestal is another anxious attachment principle at play. Feeling small and inferior in comparison to your partner. Seeing or remembering only the best in your partner after a fight while forgetting their negative side. This came up earlier as well. Mistaking an activated attachment system for love. So, an activated attachment system is basically where, when we're triggered, when our attachment system is triggered. So, let's say in Lorette's case, when her husband was maybe meant to go on one of these ski trips, her anxiety would be triggered, her attachment system would be triggered, and the fear of like abandonment or kind of, not being in control or not having him around would basically trigger her attachment system. So when your attachment system's activated, you're kind of more on edge, you're coming from a place of like fear and worry and anxiety, and you kind of typically like need more from the other person, or you need like reassurance or calming down, etc. So living in the danger zone as well, which the danger zone is something they specifically speak about in Attached, and it's a pattern where your kind of attachment system keeps getting activated again and again, and it's kind of a cyclical thing. So living on an emotional roller coaster, getting addicted to the highs and the lows. So one of the theories is that the reason that people with anxious attachment and people with avoidant attachment style gravitate to each other is because they each feed into their beliefs about like what other people do. So for example, somebody who's avoidant fundamentally believes that people are, like people are clingy and needy, and therefore they seek that out and they find that because it helps to maintain their beliefs, and it helps them to kind of, and it's not a conscious decision, by the way, any of this, but it makes them, it's congruent with what they already believe, right? So, and on the opposite side, somebody who has anxious attachment style is like fearful of being abandoned or rejected or being let down, and therefore they find people who are more likely to do that. So yes, Lorette and Mary Lou, absolutely. So pulling away is or withdrawing is a protest behavior. So that's kind of where the thing I was saying before is that that's why and how people who have these opposite attachment styles are kind of attracted to each other, and they kind of because they sort of confirm and affirm the beliefs that each of them has about the other, and they kind of allow them to live in a space and a dynamic that is familiar to them, be it from childhood or from earlier relationships. Yeah, so Alessa, exactly that. You're like withdrawing, but you're hoping they'll call your bluff and will come after you. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, exactly. It's like, but it's not. You're not necessarily doing it to seek attention, but you're basically it's any behavior that would be like protesting. So this now we're going to look at for an avoidant what the attachment principles at play would be. So for an avoidant, it's deactivating strategies. mistaking self-reliance for independence. So that's a key one. Like, people who are avoidant quite often tell themselves or believe that they are independent, and that's a good thing, and that like it's a feature, not a bug. um Inflating your own importance and self-esteem while putting your partner down, seeing only the negative in your partner and ignoring the positive, assuming malicious intent in your partner's actions, disregarding your partner's emotional cues, yearning for the phantom X. So we talked about that previously. Um, Fantasizing about the one. Hi, Linda. She's the avoidant in the room. If there's any other avoidance, feel free to join Linda's club. But we all are on a spectrum. Like, I'm sure, we all exhibit anxious or avoidant behaviors unless we're like perfect and secure, which is, not many people. So yeah, assuming malicious intent in your partner's actions, disregarding your partner's emotional cues, yearning for the phantom X, fantasizing about the one, repressing loving feelings and emotions. So those are the kind of, the ones that are less kind of sought after in terms of attachment styles. And then examples of secure principles, which a couple of you were asking about. So yeah, we kind of covered this as well earlier. Being available, not interfering, acting encouragingly, communicating effectively, don't play games. And I'm just repeating this so that you can see in the context of how different this is from the other two. View yourself as responsible for your partner's well-being. Wear your heart on your sleeve. Be courageous and honest in your interactions. Maintain focus on the problem at hand. Don't make generalizations during conflict. Douse the flame before it becomes a forest fire. Attend to your partner's upsets before they escalate. So that's basically the initial kind of overview of like what the behaviors kind of look like, and what you can expect. So I'm going to see if I can find this page that I wanted to share with you guys. So I've got a few more examples of protest behavior because you guys wanted to kind of know some of this beforehand. So some of you had clarifications that you wanted on this. So protest behavior, letting your attachment system get the best of you. So excessive attempts to reestablish. So this is basically the different types of protest behavior that show up. So, by the way, I know a few more people have joined, so just welcome to anyone else who's here, who I haven't met before, or if you haven't said hi. If this is your first time here, just like say hello, introduce yourself. We've got some lovely regulars in the room who will welcome you and hopefully make you feel happy to be here. And if anyone wants to support me, by the way, I just glanced at the time on the in progress bar, and it was 5555. So we're getting a lot of angel numbers today, which is great. But if anyone wants to support me, you can follow me on Insight Timer. I'd really appreciate that. And then I've also got a goal to reach 500 YouTube subscribers. So you can find the link to that in my link tree, or also my kind of handle has been shared in the chat, or Ega might post it again. Or just find it in the link tree. But it's basically Priyanka Rose 1111, like the words. Oh, Mel, hi friends, I haven't met yet. That's so lovely. And if anyone wants to support me on my teacher journey and make a donation, and also another thing, angel numbers, we've got 88 meditators here, which is fab. But if anyone wants to be kind of kind and generous and support me with a donation, I'd really appreciate that. If you've got any value from what I'm sharing and my time, like, no donation is too small. I went through redundancy earlier this year, so this is currently my kind of main source of income, and I'm working on some other like voluntary and charity projects just because I've got the kind of time and capacity, and I'm trying to do a lot more kind of purpose and service driven work. So yeah. So protest behavior, letting your attachment system get the best of you. So excessive attempts to and for anyone that's joined and missed this, what we're talking about now is like, these are typical behaviors that people who have anxious attachment kind of engage in or practice sometimes. Usually they're not kind of healthy behaviors. and they're a little bit like sometimes like a little bit angsty, I guess is the blunt way of putting it. So they're not coming from like a good, healthy place. They're coming from a place of fear and like potentially abandonment and having your attachment system activated. So excessive attempts to re-establish contact, calling, texting, or emailing many times, waiting for a phone call, loitering by your partner's workplace in hopes of running into them. And just to flag on that one, so there's a very typical like trope or stereotype that people who have anxious attachment are like clingy and needy, etc. And people who have avoidant attachment style are, avoidant and non-committal and like kind of to sort of tend to flee from conflict and run away, etc. So that's kind of one of the like common, the basic kind of common stereotypes. And one thing that I just want to flag is that each of these people make each other worse. So if you, and some of you might have experienced this, some of you might not, but if you are someone with anxious attachment and you obviously gravitate towards somebody who has avoidant attachment style, then that person, if they're being avoidant and they're not meeting your needs or they're not responding to you, etc., and especially if they think you're being clingy, that causes them to withdraw even further. So while you feel like your needs are not getting met and you need more from them and you need kind of reassurance and validation and more communication, they are backing away thinking you're being too needy and you need too much from them. And each person kind of perpetuates the issue and the kind of the trigger for the other one. And so there's kind of, that's why typically when people be like, oh, that person's so clingy, but actually if they were in a relationship with someone who is secure and meeting their needs and like meeting their reasonable needs for kind of contact or communication, or even if they do need a bit of extra reassurance here and there, then they wouldn't necessarily be triggered and be as needy. So and in Lorette's case, obviously she was with someone who it seems probably was secure and kind of helped her then regulate and become secure as well within 5 years. And they've been married 44 years, which, yeah, congratulations. That's amazing. And I want that. So, and don't we all? And also Mel and her 20-year anniversary as well coming up. So another one is withdrawing. Sitting silently engrossed in the paper, literally turning your back on your partner, not speaking. I guess nowadays it'd be people like on their phones, talking with other people on the phone and ignoring them. And like I've kind of done that before when I felt like upset or hurt or let down. I will just be like, I'll disengage from the conversation and go on my phone because I feel like that's me trying to control my environment and say like create some like distraction or safety for myself. Another one is keeping score, paying attention to how long it took them to return your phone call and waiting just as long to return theirs, waiting for them to make the first make-up move, like if you had a fight, and acting distant until such time. So, like, if they're not answering my calls, I won't leave them a message kind of thing. So, acting hostile is another one. Rolling your eyes when they speak, looking away, getting up and leaving the room while they're talking. Threatening to leave is another protest behavior. So making threats, we're not getting along, I don't think I can do this anymore, I knew we weren't really right for each other, I'll be better off without you, all the while hoping they'll stop you from leaving. And this is less of what you said, I think, is like not calling them, for example, in the hope that they'd call you. Exactly that. Manipulate, and I've definitely done variations of that before. Not that I'm proud of it, but like that's a very, very common anxious attachment thing. Keeping score, because what you're doing is it's the same way that children like test boundaries. You're basically testing a boundary to be like, oh, if I say this, are they going to be like, no, like I definitely want to be with you, like don't break up with me kind of thing. It's you're looking for validation, you're looking for reassurance. That's what it is. And then acting hostile, we talked about that. The page went back one. Threatening to leave. Oh no, I covered that too. Sorry guys. I'm trying to like read and also engage with you guys and chat, and I'm losing my place. So manipulations, acting busy or unapproachable, ignoring phone calls, saying you have plans when you don't, making them feel jealous. So making plans to get together with an ex for lunch, going out with friends to a singles bar, telling your partner about someone who hit on you today. So basically, protest behavior is any action that tries to re-establish contact with your partner and get their attention. So there are many ways that protest behavior can manifest itself. Anything that can jolt the other person into noticing you and responding to you. So protest behavior and activating strategies can cause you to act in ways that are harmful to the relationship. It's very important to learn to recognize them when they happen. So basically, these behaviors and strategies can also continue long after your partner's gone. This is what part of what all the heartache is about, the longing for someone who's no longer available to us when our biological and emotional makeup is programmed to try and win them back. Even if your rational mind knows you shouldn't be with this person, your attachment system doesn't always comply. The process of attachment follows its own course and its own schedule. This means you will continue to think about the other person and will be unable to push them out of your mind for a very long time. So, oh, Alessa, that's so interesting. Alessa, if you reach out to me, I will kind of drop you a line about something else that I think could be quite helpful for you and just what I've been sort of like doing and working through myself. Um, yeah, there are, Lorette. There's a lot of different remedies and things. I feel like we're not going to cover it on one session. So I think what I would love to do, maybe we make this more of a like regular monthly kind of session, but who would be up for us having a follow up on this next week, like a part 2? Because I've been learning about a sort of exploring this and like trying to do the work for a really long time, and I've gotten so much better than I was. Like my attachment style is then the thing is, people who kind of know me now wouldn't necessarily know, but if they saw me kind of 10 years ago, they'd be like, oh wow, like you've made so much progress. So just to give you an idea, and I think that's part of also just growing up as well, but to give you an idea, like in the past, people in the past I was reading Alessa's comment, so awareness is key. People do so many of these behaviors and don't even know they are. Yeah. So this book is called Attached, and it is by, let me get it for you. Mel was asking. It's called Attached: The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love. And it's by Amir Levine and Rachel S.F. Heller. So yeah, one of the things that I was going to share was like, so many years ago, like as an extreme example of my anxious attachment, I was in a relationship like in my late teens, where I found out that the person was cheating on me. And also another thing, people pleasing behavior is a very common part of people who have anxious attachment, and putting up with kind of things that you absolutely shouldn't, and that are where someone's like not treating you right and they're being terrible. So yeah, I was in a relationship where I found out someone was cheating on me, and I didn't say anything because I was worried that he would break up with me if he found out that I knew that he was cheating on me. Like, how messed up is that? But that's the kind of starting point we're talking about here, where like the level of, the fear of abandonment and rejection was that strong. And obviously, yeah, I'm at the other end of the spectrum now. But Mary Lou, it was lovely to have you here. Thank you for being with us. You can kind of catch up on the last bit on YouTube if you'd like to. But yeah, I hope to have you here again soon. Oh Mel, thanks for the hug. Yeah, but it's almost laughable, isn't it? It's like if I heard someone tell me that now, oh Mary Lou, thank you so much for the donation. That's so kind and generous of you. I really appreciate it. That will be going in my gratitude journal tonight. So every night, by the way, before I go to bed, I write down kind of all of the nice and positive things from my day. And always kind of being here with everybody and spending time with you is an absolute delight and a pleasure for me. But anyone who kind of supports me and contributes also gets like a special mention, because it really does mean a lot to me. And yeah, it's not something I kind of take for granted at all. I really appreciate all of your support in all the formats, and especially those of you who kind of follow me and come back to more sessions or share my lives with others. But yeah, I feel absolutely kind of in flow like doing this as well. Gopesh, you said, could you intelligent women help answer a question of mine? Sometimes women tend to talk a lot and it can feel overwhelming. What's the best and smartest way your partner has found to handle this situation? So I think this kind of comes down to, in my experience, like personality styles. One of the things that I actually find really helpful when I have questions like this is actually just kind of Googling them. And I know this sounds sort of like a kind of really simple thing to do and almost too simple, but I find that on places like Quora and Reddit, I feel like people actually you get a lot of different perspectives, which I feel like is really helpful. Um, Gopesh, are you speaking about like any people in particular in your life or particular situations that come up? Um, because if you can give a kind of more specific example, then I can maybe make a suggestion. But I think it's what I would advise is like, and this is for anyone that has to address something that isn't super kind of comfortable or easy. So I think it depends on who it is and what the situation is. But I would say if you're finding it overwhelming, I think if you can do your best to kind of set subtle boundaries. Oh, Laurette, it was lovely to have you here and hopefully see you next week. I think it's going to be probably Tuesday or Thursday next week, most likely. But I will probably Thursday, but I'll have a look I'll have a look at my diary and I'll schedule it in the next week or so. But it'll be one of those days. Um so okay, Gopesh, right. So what you're talking about is I'm assuming that you're struggling with situations where basically you don't feel like you're heard or seen, is that right? Or you feel like there isn't really space or capacity for you to kind of have much input or kind of involvement or influence in the conversation? Have I got a correct read of that? What I would so one of the things that I kind of advise when you're in a situation like this is, especially if it's somebody really close to you and you have some understanding of them, I think it's worth thinking about like maybe where that comes from or what that's about for them. And it can be many things, right? It's like, so I'll give you a simple example. For me, like I talk quite a lot and I sometimes can have that kind of energy or like headspace where I have a lot to kind of say or contribute. And um basically that's not because I'm selfish or I don't want to hear what anyone else has to say. What it actually is that I think as a child, or at several points previously in my life, I was maybe made to feel small or I didn't feel seen or heard. And now that I'm more kind of confident and more able to voice my needs, I almost feel like I have to like advocate for myself in a much stronger way than I ever did before. Um, but another part of it also is sometimes it's like I'm pretty sure that I have ADHD. I've never been diagnosed, but I've been told many times that a lot of the kind of behaviors or patterns or like things um that are common for that do kind of seem quite similar to like things that I do or how I am. So yeah, sometimes it can be to do with just that kind of thing and like impulse control. But Gopesh, you've said many women that you've met have one thing in common: their problems, and they are like never ending. I think like maybe potentially I would just kind of say that if you're feeling like you're meeting lots of people like that, where let's say they're complaining or there's problems, and if that doesn't make you feel good, I think where you can, to the best of your availability, the best of your kind of ability, um, it's maybe worth thinking about what you can do to set boundaries or try and meet people who kind of have a different mindset or outlook. And I think some of that also involves us doing the work, right? Like if we keep meeting the same types of people and we keep being in the same types of situations, I know it's difficult to kind of look at this and say this, but the thing is, we are the common denominator there, right? Like it's very easy to kind of outsource blame and like other people, but actually if I keep noticing like, oh, everyone I meet or everyone I like go on a date with or whatever is like this, but like I'm meeting those people, I'm spending time with those people, I'm choosing to. So at some point it's like either we've got to look for something different in who we kind of engage with, interact with, or we've got to um potentially do some work on ourselves so that actually we're the kind of person that people who have a higher vibration and let's say more like I don't know, or more kind of a wider perspective or like more general thoughts or conversations. Tommy, you're here with a pearl of wisdom as always. Welcome, welcome. Thanks, Tommy. So for those of you who don't know Tommy, he is one of our regulars and he always like has some gems. And so yeah, life is like a school of mirrors showing us to us. And you know what, Gopesh, I've noticed that myself. So in my own life, there's things that whenever I notice, like if there's things that I kind of struggle with other people or I don't like, there's something there. There's like, particularly if it comes up multiple times, it's like there's a lesson or a learning or there's something that I need to personally inside myself resolve there. Um, but it, at a surface level, I'd say kind of generally speaking, um, having alignment with what matters to you, what your values are, what kind of people you want to be surrounded by, what you want your life to look like, how you want to live, and then actually executing with that in mind. So, if there's people that don't make you feel good or you find that they're kind of endlessly complaining or they're not asking about you or, you don't feel heard or seen, um, maybe limit the time that you have with them and give your time and energy to people who have more capacity for you in the way that is meaningful to you. And you don't have to be kind of harsh or mean about doing this. It's not about like making anyone feel bad or making a drama or a big deal. It's just about saying, okay, well, this person, I don't feel super great when I spend time with this person, or, they don't really listen to me or let me speak. So I'm just going to maybe take a small step back and, you know, spend time with other people that do make me feel good. And you don't need to tell them that. You don't need to make it a big deal. Just like, have a cut off time when you've got, like schedule something for afterwards or, yeah. And I think the other thing is the complaint of non-availability. And again, it depends on like who these people are and who this is. And I think it also, it's kind of a cultural thing as well. And I had a feeling, I clicked on your profile, but I had a feeling you're based in India because in certain cultures, especially in the Indian culture and, other kind of Eastern cultures, there's very much a common theme of, and for not everyone might know this, but there's a common theme of like a sense of obligation or sense of duty, or like there's a very big history of doing things that you don't feel like doing because you like just because you feel like you should or you don't want to disappoint people or there's tradition. So for example, like in the past there'd be many, let's say, like cultural or religious like things or family things that you'd be kind of expected to go to, and it doesn't matter if your mental health or your physical health is kind of not really, if going is overextending you and kind of not really overall what you need to do. There's the thing of, oh, but I don't want to offend or upset anyone, right? So I think it's about figuring out what's more important to you, like are your boundaries and your values and prioritizing your energy and time. Is that the priority and the key, or is kind of people pleasing or trying to keep the peace? And I personally do believe there's a happy medium. But I think sometimes if you're, if you're kind of not happy with a situation and you want to kind of change something, then sometimes that takes a bit of discomfort or a bit of unpleasantness. And only you can really judge that and what's right for you. But I do really believe that as you kind of work on yourself and grow, and I've noticed this for myself and in my own life, the people that aren't meant to be there, the people that are not right for my journey start to fall away, and the people that are show up. So that's the kind of the best advice or feedback that I can kind of give on that. And let me see if there's any other comments that I've missed. If anyone else has any like similar questions for the last like 15 minutes, I'm gonna do a follow-up on the kind of attachment style stuff because I think everyone has been super engaged and interested, and as have I. And I would also be more than happy to kind of share my process and progress on this journey as well. So yeah, Alessa said, who are we attracting and choosing to engage with? And one of my favorite teachers on here, Carol, who I'm not sure if she's still here, but she did jump on earlier. She basically said she quite often says, like the people that you surround yourself with are really important. You're like the sum of the 5 people that you surround yourself with, or I've heard kind of lots of various things like that. And I also saw something the other day that it was on LinkedIn, and it was a picture of a moldy orange with other oranges next to it, and the orange that was kind of closest to it had started to catch some mold from that initial orange, even though they weren't touching. And it basically says that this proof that who you surround yourself with matters. And that's exactly it. It's so true. And we've covered this before in one of our talks as well. Um, so, where are we? I'm gonna have a little sip of hibiscus tea. If anyone has a drink with you, reminder to hydrate or to get a glass of water or whatever you like. Right. So Tommy, more pearls of wisdom. I can't wait to read it. So Tommy says the way people treat you is a reflection of how they see you. The way people see you is a reflection of how you treat yourself. You bring your own personal perceptual awareness and filters slash triggers slash childhood wounds into every interaction you have. Therefore, the outcomes you experience are predetermined significantly by your own expectations until you become aware and in real time witness your reactions. Yeah, absolutely. And Alessa kind of agreed, saying it's just so easy to blame others. That's like stage one. We have to take responsibility for what we're doing. And that's been a massive, massive shift for me over the last year or two. And I'm still very much on that journey, but we're moving, we're learning, we're getting there. Yeah. And there was something else that I was going to say, and I can't remember what it was now. Um, Oh yeah, God bless you. You're more than welcome. Like, hopefully, let us know how you get on as well. But I would also say, um, you know, and if there are people that you feel kind of close enough to, who let's say you have common friends with, or like isn't people who know the same people that you're talking about, it might be worth getting their feedback as well. And it's also potentially something you can try and do is sort of notice how other people in your life deal with or navigate or interact with these kinds of situations as well, because there might be, if let's say you're talking about one or two specific people and you have mutual friends with them, like your friends or other people who know them as well might have a way that they like deal with that situation or that person. But part of it also is just not taking it personally. So, you know, I was listening to a live on here yesterday where it was like sunny and lovely, and they were basically saying that sometimes when you're dealing with difficult people or complicated people, and it's not worth getting into like a kind of um combative or sort of frictionful conversation, sometimes it's better to just quietly agree or just like let them talk it out and kind of exhaust themselves, and then like move on or bring up something else as a topic of conversation, rather than sometimes when you challenge people or engage with people and it's not a topic of conversation you want to have, or it's just not worth it, sometimes like there's no point necessarily doing that. So yeah, has anyone else got any other like questions or sharings? And I think within the kind of next, yeah, so Gopesh, so by God's grace, so you've said by God's grace, I don't find myself into such situations anymore. Just wanted to future proof just in case. And Gopesh, if you're not in that situation, fantastic. But don't worry about it then, because it's it's one of those things where you don't want to manifest that if it's not happening now. If it's happened in the past and you figured it out and you're not in that situation, I think you kind of have the tools, you know what to do. You've managed to kind of move forward from that and move yourself out of that. So yeah, there's one thing actually that I just remembered what I did want to share. So we have a lot of people who weren't with us last week, and um one of the things that I can't remember who it was now, but it was one of my favorite things that anyone has ever shared on one of my lives, and I've shared it with a few people in real life and saying it to them since, is that we judge others. And please remind me if this was you that said it and you're here, please remind me so I can shout you out. But basically they said that we judge ourselves by our intentions, because obviously we know where we're coming from, but we judge others by their behaviors or actions. So basically, and that, I don't know why, but it was so profound to me that it's so true that basically we judge ourselves based on where we're coming from, but we judge other people based on what they're doing without necessarily us knowing or understanding where they're coming from, right? So yeah, absolutely loved that. And guys, it's 22:22 in London. So what angel numbers? And Alessa said, Alessa, I nearly had a slip of the tongue because I was just excited to read your comment. I wanted better relationships, but essentially I had to become that person first. If you're consistently negative and a positive person comes along, they'll keep walking. Yeah, I definitely hear that. Yeah, exactly that. It's like we attract what we're putting out as well, right? And what we feel we deserve. So Tommy said, we don't see people who they are, we see people who we are. We project our internal outward. Absolutely. More pearls of wisdom from Tommy. And Gopesh, yeah, true, true, absolutely. So we have 7 minutes left together, and I'm gonna find another little bit from attached just to kind of read and end on. But if anyone wants to share anything in the chat meanwhile, please do. And also if you are if you're not already following me on Insight Timer, please do. I kind of have lives every week on UK 9 p.m. so the same time this one started. On Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Gopesh, that's so funny calling Tommy Tommypedia. Yeah, I feel like not Tommypedia because Wikipedia is too general. It needs to be something more specialist. But absolutely, I think we can workshop that, guys. If anyone has any other like fun puns for Tommy's pearls of wisdom, please share. If Tommy, if you're open to that, with your permission, of course. Tommy GPT, love that. Tommy, have you had any others from anyone else in real life? Because I'm sure you're dropping pearls of wisdom like that in person too. So Alessa said, it goes both ways too. Now when I meet a person who I can tell clearly values themselves, it makes me want to keep talking to them. Absolutely. And it's also another thing that I learned actually. So I've been doing this course, as I said, on anxious attachment, and it's kind of a course in the community. And if anyone wants to kind of get more info on that, like message me and I can tell you my experience with it. Obviously, we're not allowed to kind of talk about external things on Insight Timer Lives. If anyone is struggling with that and wants kind of some support, drop me a line. But basically, one of the things that was flagged is like many of us actually don't really have secure role models for healthy relationships. So it's worth seeking them out. And actually, I look at that as true for any area of your life. So if you want to do something, if you're looking to achieve something or you have a goal or an ambition, find someone who has a similar story to you. They might have, been be from the same place as you, like the same country or the same sort of upbringing or the same background. But find someone that you can on some level relate to who's done the thing that you want to do or something similar, and then look at their journey. And that's kind of, that's something that I've learned or been told, that you need to know what healthy relationships look like to be able to know that you want what, to be able to know what that should look like if you have one, or if you're looking for that or trying to, improve your relationships. But similarly, if you want to become a CEO, for example, like it's helpful if you can see other CEOs and know what their path is or what they're doing. Like whatever the kind of goal or whatever the kind of blueprint you're looking for, essentially like a vague blueprint. Right, let me find. So I'm just figuring out how the whole bookmarking thing works on Kindle, and I realized that actually what's happened is that I've bookmarked loads of pages from this book because they're really insightful. So right. So we've obviously covered kind of what the attachment styles are, and for anyone that's kind of just joined now as we're wrapping up, this will be on YouTube, and you can find the link to that in my link tree. Also, if you're open to supporting me at all, I would love a follow on here. Also, I've got a goal to reach 500 YouTube subscribers by, well, as soon as possible, really, because I want to start posting kind of new shorter form content, some of which will be the little pearls of wisdom from here, not just Tommy's, but, everyone's, and my own, hopefully. And then I'll also be creating kind of just shorter form little snippets and little tips and things about various topics and themes around building community and connection and how to have more of that in our lives and kind of, return to our roots as social connected beings. And what else? And if you are in a position or you've got any value from what I've shared today and you are keen to support my journey as a teacher, any donations are really greatly appreciated. So thank you guys. So, back to where we were at. I'm just finding a last little closing bit to share. So we've talked about kind of, where attachment styles come from. Let's see. So one of the things and I've shared this before, but I think it's like relevant, and this just kind of goes to show the power of attachment and how we can influence one another and why this is important for connection and healthy friendships, relationships, etc. So dependency is not I just pressed something on here. I'm not sure. I think it's still connected. I just touched a button and I got paranoid that I turned it off. So dependency is not a bad word is what this chapter is called. So essentially the crux of this is that there's a story that they're telling. I'm not going to read it out directly verbatim, but essentially they're telling a story about a couple that are on a reality TV show, and it's called Race Against I think it's race against across the world or something like that. They haven't named it here, probably for like copyright reasons. But they've said that Karen and Tim were the show's dream couple, beautiful, sexy, smart, and successful. In the face of the various challenges they encountered, intimate details about their relationship emerged. Karen wanted to get married, but Tim was reluctant. So that's a typical kind of anxious avoidant dynamic. So, Karen wanting to get married, probably either secure or anxiously attached. And then Tim being reluctant, that's a classic avoidant thing, fear of commitment. And he valued his independence and she wanted to get closer. At certain high pressure moments during the race, and often after an argument, Karen needed Tim to hold her hand. Tim was hesitant to do so. It felt too close, and besides, he didn't want to succumb to her every whim. By the last show, Tim and Karen were leading the race. They almost won the big cash prize, but at the finish line, they were beaten. When they were interviewed for the season finale, they asked in retrospect if they'd do anything differently. Karen says, I think we lost because I was too needy. Looking back, I see that my behaviour was a bit much. Many times I needed Tim to hold my hand during the race, but I don't know why it was so important to me. But I've learnt a lesson from this, and I've decided that I don't need to be that way anymore. Why did I need to hold his hand so much? That was silly. I should have just kept my cool without needing this gesture from him. Tim, for his part, said very little. The race in no way resembled real life. It was the most intense experience I've ever had. During the race, we didn't even have time to be angry with each other. We just dashed from one task to the next. Both Karen and Tim neglect to mention an important fact. Tim got cold feet before a joint bungee jump challenge and almost quit the race, despite Karen's reassurance and encouragement that she too would be jumping with him. He just wouldn't do it. It reached the point that he took off all of his gear and started walking away. Finally, he mustered the courage to take the challenge after all. Because of that particular hesitation, they lost their lead. Adult attachment theory teaches us that Karen's basic assumption that she can and should control her emotional needs and soothe herself in the face of stress is simply wrong. She assumed that the problem was she is too needy, whereas research findings support the exact opposite. Getting attached means that our brain becomes wired to seek the support of our partner by ensuring the partner's psychological and physical proximity. If our partner fails to reassure us, we're programmed to continue our attempts to achieve closeness until the partner does. If Karen and Tim understood this, she would not feel ashamed of needing to hold his hand during the stress of a nationally televised race. For his part, Tim would have known that the simple gesture of holding Karen's hand could give them the extra edge they needed to win. Indeed, if he knew that by responding to her need early on, he would have had to devote less time to putting out fires caused by her compounded distress later, he might have been inclined to hold her hand when he noticed that she was starting to get anxious, instead of waiting until she demanded it. What's more, if Tim had been able to accept Karen's support more readily, he probably would have bungee jumped sooner. So, attachment principles teach us that most people are only as needy as their unmet needs. When their emotional needs are met, and the earlier the better, they usually turn their attention outwards. This is sometimes referred to in attachment literature as the dependency paradox. The most effectively dependent people are on one another. The more effectively dependent people are on one another, the more independent and daring they become. Karen and Tim were unaware of how to best use their emotional bond to their advantage in the race. So that's basically the thing that I really love about that, and what one of the things that I'm sort of learning is that there's a line and a balance between, like, you know, typically people who have anxious attachment are seen as needy, but actually, we're human and we're human beings that have needs. All of us are. And so it's kind of balancing that, but also maybe at the same time not using that as an excuse to like behave badly, or, not work on ourselves and not improve our attachment styles if we can, and, come to a more secure place. Because, I'll give you an example where for me, as a simple thing, I've been in relationships and situations where actually I've been with partners who will make a lot of effort and do a lot of things. And there's times where, because of my anxious attachment, instead of me focusing, I can focus on all the nice things that they've done and be grateful for them. But then as soon as I feel let down, or something like doesn't get done, or I feel upset about something, it's almost like all the other things go out the window, and it's like I'm focusing on that one thing. And, in those situations, I need to kind of zoom out. But that's a very common, thing that I struggle with or have struggled with. And but it's like, it's kind of balancing what needs need to be met and what's valid and reasonable. And then also where I can also let go a little bit and not always need to have, the exact like reassurance or affection or whatever else exactly the way I need it, or the way that I have in my head. Because ultimately other people are other people. Like, we can't force them or make them say or do exactly what we want in the way that we would do it. And they don't know, not everyone like thinks the same way as we do. Like, it's very rare that people do. I'm going to wrap up here because we've hit time, but I hope everybody enjoyed kind of hanging out and being with us, and sharing some time together in the room. And thank you for your kind of support, for your time, for being here with me. Obviously, Mary Lou left, but thank you for your donation, Mary Lou, just in case you watch this back or you're still listening. If anyone else wants to contribute, you can either do so here via Insight Timer, or I've also got a link tree. I've got a PayPal link on my link tree, because Apple devices, if you donate via Apple devices on Insight Timer, Apple takes 30%. So yeah, and Alessa, lovely to have you here. I hope you enjoyed hanging out with us, and we'd love to see you back. Yeah, it's usually a fun time, and I mean, it always is, right, guys? And then what else have I got to share? I don't know if there's anything else, but it was great to have you all here. Oh, and you asked me about my Halloween, Mel. It was good. I did a couple of like immersive horror experience things, but I'm an absolute like baby and I scream and get scared really easily. One of them I felt like I was like very brave, and actually didn't like scream or whatever too much. And then the other one I actually was like absolutely losing my shit. So yeah, it was fun. And then I also went to a Halloween party, but also Halloween was on Diwali this year. So I went for some Nepalese food as well, which was quite nice. And I'll be seeing my family like this weekend, even though it's belatedly, but for Diwali. So that should be exciting. We're gonna go to like a magic show and go for dinner. Um, but yeah, Mel, looking forward to catching up with you soon. Hopefully, drop me a line as well, and have a lovely, lovely 20th anniversary. Oh yeah, okay. So for those of you, I'll just flag this now. So for those of you who kind of weren't here last week, one of the things that I organised last week, speaking of like community and connection, is trick or treating for like kids in my apartment building. So basically, there's a girl who lives here that I'm friends with, and she's 8 years old and she has cancer. So she can't go very far, and also just like, she's been seeing Halloween on TV and has wanted to go trick or treating. And her mum messaged me last week saying, "Hey, is there any chance you're home for Halloween? Could we come and just knock on your door for trick or treating?" And then basically, but I wasn't going to be home because I was out for Halloween and Diwali. And so I said to her, like, let me just see if any other neighbors are going to be home and if she can knock on their doors. Like, I'm sure it'd be a nice thing to do. And so I run kind of the WhatsApp groups for my development, and I put a message in there. I created a Google Doc and I said, "Hey guys, if anyone, there's only a few kids in the development. If anyone is happy for having, you know, any like cute little ones knock on your door tomorrow for Halloween, please put your flat number, your name, and what time you're available." So basically, loads of people like filled this out, and then the kids got to do a big like trick or treat going around the different apartments. And it was just such a nice thing. And like someone on the group was like, "This is what community is all about." And it made me feel really nice that even though I couldn't be there, I got to kind of like help create that. So that was yeah, just like a thing. And just as a little nudge or reminder, if any of you get the opportunity to create like community connection or do a nice thing in your own lives, um, please do. And I don't think I need to say that to anyone on Insight Timer. We're all sort of that ilk or that vibe. But I think that's the note I'll end on. So yeah. So just, in a nutshell, there's a lot to talk about around attachment styles, and everyone seemed to be really like engaging and interested. So I'll share more on that next week. And then also, yeah, if anyone wants to follow, support, come to other lives, please do. I'd love to have you, and it's great to meet all of you and meet more of you week by week. And yeah, good night. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And yeah, thank you for being there. Thank you for being here. And thanks for your questions, your comments, your kind of input as well. And for all my regulars that make this like a lovely space and welcome everyone else, the biggest thank you. Bye, guys. Have a good night. And anyone who missed the beginning part, like you can catch up on YouTube. Everything, you can find everything like that in my link tree. Bye. See you next week.